I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Humphries, can you call the roll, please?
President Osborne,
Here.
Vice President Holcomb,
Here.
Member Kazi,
Here.
Member Spear,
Here.
Member Gresham.
Here.
All are present.
All right, and the first thing on the agenda is the public hearing, item 1.3. Dr. Gann, will you introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, President Osborne, members of the Governing Board and Cabinet. By law, we are required to present the proposed budget for a second time. Our Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Lori Garvey, will present the proposed budget for you to adopt for the 22-23 school year. Ms. Garvey?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, Dr. Guerin, and members of Cabinet. Today's budget hearing is on the proposed budget. It was originally presented on June 14th. And at the time when we did present that and it was approved by the governing board, the legislature had not come to any final decisions yet on the state budget. Since then, they have. New forms have been put out by the Auditor General, and the budget that's being presented to you today for consideration for adoption later is on those new forms with the new formula amounts associated. Oops. Whoa, I'm just going so. Are we both doing it, Danielle? So there were several changes that were made to the budget. I'm highlighting the ones here that did impact Madison School District. So the base support level increase, which we did anticipate that we would get the 2%, since it is in law that we do receive the lesser of 2% or inflation, and since inflation was over 2, we did believe we'd be getting at least 2, but the base, I'm sorry, I'm going back one. The base support level went up 7.42%, so $329.74 more per weighted student count. And that goes to cover, to maintain our purchasing powers for the day-to-day operations of the district. Another change, there's been a lot of conversation in the past few years about changing some special ed weights. All of our students receive extra additional weighting depending on their category, including regular education. But to help offset the increased cost of some of the special ed categories, we do receive additional funding through weights. So in this one, it's a multiple category. It's one line on the budget, but it covers multiple categories, as you can see: developmentally delayed, emotionally disabled, mild speech language and specific learning, and other health. So it's quite a broad category. Before, the weight was 0.093. That was increased to 0.2920. When we applied that towards the number of students that we have that fall in that category, that amounted to an additional almost 83 students on our ADM. So that is a significant amount. This is the first year that a free or reduced price lunch weight has been added to the budget. So based on the count of free and reduced students that the district has, we get a 0.18 weight for them. When you applied those towards, we had a little over 1,500 students. It was 27.61 additional students. Those were the things that affected our maintenance and operations budget. And then there was one item that affects our capital budget, and that was an increase in the formula amount for district additional assistance. It went up 11.44%, $51.57 per student count. And this is the first time that this formula has been adjusted in over 25 years. So this is really significant for school districts. So then I put that into, well, what does that mean in terms of dollars? The 7.42% is almost $2.3 million of total new funding. The special ed weight increase, those 82 students, $395,102. The free and reduced price is $131,855. And then it does impact, because this affects our revenue control limit, it affects our override amounts. So it's 15% of all that new money gets added to the override. I wanted to make note of that. So the override goes up $423,654, bringing our total increase to the maintenance and operations budget to $3,238,296. That number just rolled forward on the top of this screen here to the total increase. I just wanted to remind, a couple reminders here, that back in April, the governing board did approve recommendations that came forward from the superintendent for $600,000 worth of this new funding, because we did believe that we get the 2% inflation. So that leaves us with the remaining balance to be allocated of just a little over $2.6 million. At the same time that the governing board approved that, they did also approve, you also approved the recommendation that if additional funds were allocated, they would go towards additional salary increase and an additional noon duty aid for each of our schools. And then just to look at the budget commitments that were approved back in April that are included within this budget was the categories of salaries and benefits for the 3% salary increase, the decompression phase 2, the additional paid holiday for some classified staff, and then the increased daily rate for subs that utilizing Spanish. And then we had some non-M&O commitments, and that was out of ESSER and the sub fund. When we look at the capital budget for next year, the increase, that 11.44% on the formula, amounts to $282,698,000. And then again, the capital override is based on actually the M&O revenue control limit, and it's 10% of that. So that is an additional $276,416 for a total of $559,114 of new revenue for our capital fund. The classroom site fund has stayed the same since the proposed budget. There was an increase in formula of $15 per weighted student count. The use of funds can be for anything in that list there. Highlighted in green is how Madison uses it for teacher compensation, for base pay, and then a performance pay component. The total budget limit is $7,892,467. And this was part of the proposed budget because this does get set by the legislature on March 31st. So we knew that number going into our proposed budget. Our major federal state grants stayed the same from the proposed. We have Title I, Title II, IDEA, ESSER 3. We have spent ESSER 1 and 2, and then the results-based funding. When you look at the district's total aggregate budget, it is, when you look at maintenance and operations, it's $43,910,000. Our capital fund is at $12,314,000, and our federal projects are at $8.2 million, with a total aggregate school budget limit of $64,454,778. Our average teacher salary increased the 3% is for next year. This current year is $58,863, which is an increase at this point of $1,714. And that is it. Are there any questions?
Questions for Ms. Garvey? One question I have, and it's not specifically related to the budget presentation, but one of the things that the legislature did was assume some of the property tax burden. At some point, if you can find out what that means to our taxpayers, because I think that's important. A point. I think the budget line item is about a $350 million a year kind of withdrawal from property taxpayers. And I know each district pays a different amount, but I think that'd be helpful information to have.
Yes, I can.
Ms. Kazi.
Forward.
Was it the threshold as far as valuations, or like what? Do you know what how the calculations are?
So in essence, once you get up to a certain contribution level, then the state has to assume more burden. And then what the legislature did is said, instead of the districts, as I understand it, providing their property taxpayers paying into the state fund, that the general fund now is taking those obligations. So, and it's a pretty significant number that will provide some pretty major property tax relief for our taxpayers. It's part of our very convoluted funding system to equalize levels of support.
Yes.
Dr. Osborne, do you know, is that an ongoing thing or is that just for this
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I think the legislature will regret that in 5 or 10 years when that balloons, but hey, it's a decision they made.
My understanding that this has been in place, for example, in Pinal County, to some degree. Am I correct in assuming that? That's my understanding.
So yeah, there's,
Right now,
there are caps on the total amount that you can levy.
right.
And in certain district, or parts of the state that have very high property taxes from all, that contribution tends to be more.
Okay, I will be interested in diving into this.
Other questions? One other question, Ms. Gar. There were a number of other, I think, grants and other things that were passed. I think potential grants for counselors and SROs and things. I assume we're starting to look at those options too. Not, obviously, it's not ripe for that, but there's quite a bit of opportunities.
Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Guerin and Cabinet, yes, there are other opportunities, and when we revise our budget and those funds are awarded to us, we will be adding them in.
Okay, perfect. And I think just for the public, what we're doing now is approving kind of the base budget. We have about 2.2 million roughly in M&O dollars that we can allocate, and we will be having further discussions on how to allocate those. So we're not just leaving those as an additional balance, but we'll be having subsequent discussions about that.
Yes.
Dr. Osborne, Mr. President, I think it's also important now to point out, because we've had this discussion before and ongoing, is that the legislature increased the base rate so that the money we're allocating now are not one-time funds, that they are funds that will continue on because the obligations we're assuming are continuing obligations, but they're already funded on an ongoing basis.
This is probably the most significant investment we've had since I've been on the board. You know, I think it's kind of like 20 for 20, but all in 1 year. And so I think the legislature should be, it's truly a bipartisan budget. Education did exceptionally well. And, I think hopefully this will give us an opportunity to keep investing in our human capital and hopefully kind of take the edge off these really high inflation rates.
It's a huge relief, and we'll work with our stakeholders to make sure we gather some input. We've made some significant steps with decompression of our salary schedule, and we'll be able to continue to work with that and also provide increases in salary. So we will be seeking input and bringing that back to the board.
And I think it's also important for those, and I know Ms. Garvey always thinks about those things that are one-time funds that we want to make sure ongoing, that if we have the opportunity to fund those. And I'm also thinking about the results-based funding, because we're going to have a new governor. It may come back, it may not, so I think we should take that into account. And I know we've always treated that as kind of quasi one-time money, but so just keep those things in mind. All right, any other thoughts or questions? Alrighty, let's see. So I'm going to adjourn the public hearing and then call the special meeting to order. Let's see. Ms. Spear, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's see. Ms. Spear, and I'll give it to Ms. Kazi. Please vote. I noticed Dr. Guerin is pretty slick to run the meeting quick, so there's no board member reports.
President Osborne, I thought I'd ease into it.
That's going to be a 2-hour speech next time. All right, the agenda has been approved. Do I have a motion on the consent items?
So moved.
Ms. Gresham, do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Kazi with the second. All right, the motion passes. The consent items have been approved. I'm now on to item 4.1, action on food and nutrition services meal prices. Dr. Gannon, will you introduce this item?
Certainly, President Osborne, governing board members, and cabinet. Ms. Garvey is doing the heavy lifting this evening, and she will present our recommendation for a meal increase and the rationale behind that for the 22-23 school year. Ms. Garvey?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Guerin, and cabinet. Food and Nutrition Services is requesting a slight increase to the cost of breakfast and lunch. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, for the past 2 years, as we're aware, the USDA has approved and been offering free, through them, we are able to offer free breakfast and lunch to all students during the pandemic. That has now come to an end as of June 30th, and we were allowed to continue it for through summer feeding. But as we go into next year, students again will need to start filling out applications in order to receive those free or reduced priced meals. And those that do not qualify will need to pay. We'd like to stress during school check-in days that it's really important for people to fill that paper out, even if they don't qualify. It's just, it helps the district, and it's very important. In addition to the fact that we are going back to a different reimbursement model now for free and reduced from the federal government, we have increasing cost and some supply chain issues which are really driving up our costs and things that we see are happening. As part of the meal prices and the reimbursement that we receive from the federal government, we even do receive reimbursement for every paid meal that we have. However, the federal government cannot be supplementing the cost of paid student meals to a high degree. And as a result, the Arizona Department of Education has calculated how much school districts need to charge for lunch in order for that not to be happening. And they've issued a memorandum stating that the paid lunch should be set to $3.31. As you can see from the first bullet, our lunches are not there. Our K-4 is $2.25, and our 5th through 8th grade lunches are $2.50. There is a transitional waiver that we can use. We would not like to bump the cost up this much and put that burden on our families, especially as we know what's happening out there with inflation and everything else going on. So we would like to keep the cost increase as minimal as we can while still being able to continue our operations. So based on that, we are recommending that meal prices go up 10 cents for breakfast and 25 cents for lunch for both the K-4 students and the middle school students. So that would be bringing lunch to $2.50 for the kinder through 4th and $2.75 for the 5th through 8th grade. And that is it. Were there any questions?
Go ahead, Ms. Kazi.
So it's been a long time since anyone's had to complete a free and reduced lunch form. So I just want to state that I'm hoping that we have a really solid push during registration because obviously it not only impacts our bottom line, but it impacts obviously more critically those students and their ability to access lunches.
Yes.
Is there any, I mean, have we looked at other districts? Are there any exemplars of what they're doing to get families to fill out those forms? Because I know it's a constant challenge. It was a constant challenge prior. I can't imagine it's not going to be a constant challenge this time as well.
Mm-hmm. We will be reaching out to families that we had applications from before that are, as they return, we can see and we can reach out. Our cafeteria managers will all have applications available to them there. We are trying to make it as easy for somebody to fill out an application as we possibly can. So it's definitely available online. That's our preference, but we also know there are some families that don't have that access, and we will do everything we can. And of course, if a student comes and they don't have money on account or they don't have this set up, we are still going to provide them with a lunch for that day.
Just as a suggestion, at a school that my son attended, it was a form I had to fill out in order for him to complete his registration, no matter the family. And that was, was part of the entire packet, and there's just something to be said when you just have to fill out the form. We had to fill out the family for homelessness form and the free and reduced lunch form. So just a suggestion.
I think that's a good suggestion. Let's see how we're doing with compliance, and if that doesn't work, then I think maybe we go to the more aggressive matter. Ms. Spear.
I did want to commend Madison for coming up with a program where you're able to donate what remaining balance your student might have. As a parent of a child that just promoted from 8th grade, I believe that there was money in there that I put there 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And so, of course, we'll be donating those monies, and I hope that other families who have not missed that $42 or whatever that have been sitting out there are able to donate, so that we can help those families who might not be able to cover the bill, and yet have also not filled out the form. But I also support, I have also had to complete the homeless forms and the free and reduced lunch forms for my own students once they've left Madison. And I didn't even think twice about it, for what that's worth.
Ms. Gresham.
Thank you. Can I just clarify a couple of things? So we have the waiver for this coming school year, and then after that, we'll have to go up to the 331?
The final determination of that, we don't have, but that is what we have heard so
Expected.
far, yes.
Okay, thanks. And so, I mean, I'm definitely okay with these increases. They're very modest. I just worry that if we have to go up, that'll be a bigger jump at the next year. So hopefully we get everyone to fill out the forms and things, but yes, and like Ms. Spear said, the being able to donate, you do it on the school lunch where you pay for your school lunches, you can donate now. So that's always been an issue with us in the PTOs and things. How can we provide for those so we can, not have the lunch shaming and all that? But yeah, I guess we'll see what the minimum is going to need to be, because I do worry about the year after having a bigger jump than we're prepared for. So thanks.
Dr. Guerin.
Okay. Dr. Osborne, governing board members and cabinet, we've been discussing this at length because it is such an important issue, and working with Ms. Vargas and her department on advertising the need to do that and how we can incorporate it in the days where the parents come back and fill out the forms. So we will continually update you on this status because it is such a priority item for us.
Ms. Garvey, I have a question. Can you walk me through how the math works again? So, or in essence, we're asking for a waiver, so the feds are going to fill that gap for an additional year, or because I assume we're operating because it's an enterprise fund at cost. So I just walk me through how that math works.
Sure. So Dr. Osborne, members of the board, and Dr. Guerin and cabinet. So the waiver is granted to the state. So the state can pass that transitional waiver on to the school districts, and they can determine if they're going to raise the amount or if they're going to take the waiver for the whole year, knowing that in the subsequent year, it could go up to the full $3.31. In the past, the federal government did allow us to do, they had in place minimum increases, so it wouldn't be that $1.06 jump in 1 year, but you had to do at least a minimum of something. We do not know what that's going to look like after this year, and the feds are still going to set the actual reimbursement rate, the amount we get for every free, every reduced, and every paid lunch at the end of this week. They will set that, so we will know more. It also depends on the health of your food service bank account balance, as to if you need to increase a certain amount over the minimum amount, somewhere in there. They will look at, in the past, they have looked at our account balance to see if we are operating a healthy enterprise fund. And if we are, and we're showing that we're not supplanting with the federal funds, then we have been allowed not to do the increases, which is where Madison has been. So we have not had to do any increases. It's been a long time, 2010 since breakfast and 2014 for lunch. So it's another formula that has a lot of components, and you can meet those requirements based on other criteria.
But your assessment is, with this increase, we're likely to get approved by the feds, and we'll maintain a
Yes.
healthy balance for the enterprise fund.
Yes.
Okay. I am a little nervous the jump next year is, maybe we could have gone up a little bit more, but I think I'm fine given how high the inflation is, and, it's just a risk. So,
Dr. Osborne?
Mr. Holcomb.
Yeah, Ms. Garvey, can you explain, if we didn't try to comply with this, in other words, we tried to keep it down, what would be the impact on our budget? I mean, if we lost the
The
federal
impact
funding.
is that we could be looking at a loss next year, depending on how many students, again, sign up for free and reduced, how many are buying. We do anticipate that there will probably actually be a decrease in participation, because this past year, everybody was eating for free, so students would eat. We do anticipate seeing a little bit lower participation. We're hoping not, but we're anticipating that. And if we can't operate in a negative situation. You can, but eventually then you're going to have to raise, and then that bump might be significant. And so we would rather phase it in, make sure that we're covering so that we can take use of those, should we get an additional ability to waiver because we have a cash balance, to utilize a waiver in the future to keep our rates at the ones that are being proposed tonight.
But if we didn't try to comply with the SDA requirements, we'd lose the federal funding.
Eventually, yes, you can.
Yeah. And just to mention about the lunch shaming, I want to make sure everyone knows we have a policy against that. We don't allow that at any level.
That is correct.
Okay.
A quick question.
Ms. Kazi.
So where we have concerns, we were having some issues with balances of families that had the ability to pay. Do we feel comfortable with the system we have in place now, that we're not going to see that next year as well? Or is that a continuing issue we're going to have to face again?
Board Member Kazi, that is probably an ongoing issue because it never completely resolved. I know that our cafeteria manager spent a lot of hours on the phone calling and trying. So I would anticipate that there will still be some of that.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating that families that can't afford, So, all right, can I get a motion on item 4.1, unless anyone has any other questions?
So moved.
Ms. Field
Second.
and Ms. Gresham with the second. Please vote. The motion passes. Now on to item 4.2. I think we need any discussion on this. This is just adopting the motion that we heard in the public hearing, unless anyone has any questions that have arisen in the last 20 minutes.
Do we need a motion?
If not, I take a motion.
Okay, I will move to adopt the proposed budget.
I second the
second.
motion.
And Ms. Gresham and Ms. Kazi with the second. The motion passes. All right, item 4.3, argument in support of special district additional assistance override elections. Dr. Guerin, I think we're making a small change to the board letter. Can you explain that item?
Sure. President Osborne, governing board members, and cabinet, I want to thank Ms. Garvey for her work on this. We took the proposed language it was reviewed by an attorney to make sure we were in compliance with state statute. There was a very minor language change, and so we are asking for your approval on this item. Ms. Garvey, if you'd like to explain that small change.
Sure. Dr. Osborne, members of the board, Dr. Guerin and cabinet, you can see the letter that is up on the screen now, right almost in the middle, in the second paragraph down the second sentence. As a fiscally responsible district, Madison has stayed within budget limits while reducing the total school district property tax rate for each of the past 7 years. That is the sentence that was modified. Before the sentence said Madison has stayed within its budget limits while reducing its portion of the school district tax rate, and that was a little bit confusing and how you would look at it. So legal suggested that we clarify that a little bit and make it less vague or less for interpretation. So this was the only suggestion that came forward from legal.
Because there's multiple rates, not just one rate. Okay. Any comments, thoughts, questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the override statement, the additional as presented.
I will,
Oh, go ahead.
I will second the motion.
Mr. Holcomb and Ms. Spear with the second. Please vote. The voting system's getting a little quicker today.
No, that was very fun, very speedy.
Dr. Guerin's already taking credit for that. I can see in their smile.
It's definitely because of me.
The motion has been approved. Now on to item 5.1, discussion regarding future meetings. Dr. Guerin, you want to introduce
Sure.
this item?
President Osborne, members of the governing board, cabinet, and guests. In looking at the future meetings, we have a governing board meeting on July 26, and I'm suggesting that we begin at 5 p.m. with an executive session to talk about the budget, the new funds, interest-based negotiations. We'll be reaching out to all the leaders of our stakeholder groups to get some input, and we'd like to have some discussion around the budget. In addition, we will have a regular meeting where there's many consent agenda items that are typical for this time of year, and we will be also introducing some new administrators that are working for our team. So we're going to have them come and bring their families. I also would like to present a mitigation update based on the current state of COVID and how we're working to keep students in school and staff safe and be responsive to the new guidance. So we will present that on July 26th. Please don't forget, we have our Welcome Back event on August 4th at the Madison Center for the Arts. We're very excited about that, followed up by our August 9th meeting.
One suggestion, I know it'd be nice if we can get some type of input from the Budget Advisory Committee. I would hate to have, hey, you approve the budget, hey, by the way, we got an extra $2 million. I just want to make sure and I know it's summer, so it may not be as responsive, but if we at least make an effort and get some input.
President Osborne, that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Thoughts, comments on the upcoming agenda? Mr. Holcomb.
Just if we get a schedule for the back to staff welcome back event, it'd be helpful, because a lot of times, sometimes you want us there for the whole thing, sometimes you want us in and gone, so, you know.
Absolutely, and we're trying to keep it brief. We know that staff members are busy, so we'd love for you to stay because you're going to be handing out all the prizes at the end, Board Member Holcomb. So
Those are the prizes the community is supposed to be donating to.
Yeah, you're the finale, so we definitely need you to stay.
Okay. Other thoughts, other comments?
I just may need to call in for for July 26th meeting, but that's it.
And I will be early driving from San Diego. Corey's got a soccer tournament, so I'll probably get here right in the nick of time, so. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I will second.
And Ms. Kazi and Ms. Spear, congratulations, Dr. Guerin, on a successful first meeting.
Thank you so much.
Please vote. All right, the meeting is adjourned.